Hello everyone, I'm Brian. Today I'm reacting to The Robot's Ego, Acharya Prashant at St. Xavier, Mumbai, 2022. I was just scrolling through Acharya's video. There's a lot of them I want to react to, but I'm feeling a little sick, and this one's a relatively short one, but also I am interested in what does it mean by the robot's ego? Is this AI? But anyways, I would say like the robots don't really have egos, but I could be wrong. So let's go and get started.
I want to ask, a robot doesn't have ego. So now what is the intersection between the urge to be towards freedom and your ego?
You could say the robo does have an ego planted into it by
Mm,
its designer. Hmm? Therefore, the ego of the robo is totally in bondage and therefore choiceless. You could either say the robo has
mm,
no ego, and that would be perfectly correct. Or you could say the robo has an ego, a sense of I. What is ego? A sense of I. 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 The robo has an ego that cannot choose. We utter I. We utter I exist. I am. And this I amness could either be robotic or real. It is robotic when your I amness is dependent on others. And if you feel threatened that if the other disappears or withdraws, the I amness itself will disappear. That's the slave ego. For example, I am rich. What is the ego? The I am thing is the ego. And if the ego says I am rich, and if the riches vanish for some reason, a stock market crash, let's say, the fellow says, oh my God, I'm gone. Because who was I? The rich one. And the riches have gone, so I'm dead. I am rich. Now strike out the word rich. What remains? Nothing. Huh? That's false ego. But most of us choose to live in this kind of false and dependent ego. Real ego is self-dependent, free. It does not find it necessary to identify itself with something.
external.
It does not experience a kind of vacuum that it must compulsorily fill up with something, anything, some trash. Many of us, for example, might be finding it difficult to just sit silently and listen. Because in the moment of silence, you have to say, I am. In fact, you don't even say, I am. There is just silence. And that's a threat to the ego, because the ego must say something. I am X, I am Y. So the ego chooses to say, I am gossiping. Now, gossip makes the ego feel alive. Oh, I exist. Otherwise, there is the danger of inner death. Obviously, a false death. No real danger, actually. Do you get this? The way we are born with the sense of I am. It is this sense of I am that works all life to gain fulfillment. Being unfulfilled is our condition right since birth. But we choose, because of ignorance, fulfillment from the wrong kind of, not even wrong, useless kind of sources. We choose to be associated with something that will fail in delivering fulfillment. So I am rich, or I am traveling, I am a tourist, I am a husband, I am a lover, I am educated, I am intelligent, I am Hindu, I am Muslim, I am male, I am female. I'm smart. We want at all moments to associate ourselves with a certain identity, in the hope that the association will bring fulfillment. That association does not bring fulfillment because it is an exercise in the wrong direction. We require not association but actually dissociation. That is called freedom. Freedom is to dissociate yourself from all your dependencies. Would you remember this? Freedom is to dissociate yourself from your dependencies. Whereas the ego is constantly clamoring for more and more dependencies. Even the things that you call as your assets actually become your dependencies. For example, I own a Rolls Royce. In language, I seem to be implying that I am the master of the car. But tell me, one day the Rolls Royce isn't visible, something has happened. And you need to go from place A to place B. And all that is available is a humble Hero Splendor. What will happen to you? Think of your condition. Now, who's the master and who's the slave? Who is the master? Were you the owner of the car? No. The car became so important to you, you got dependent. And now when the car is not there, the car is not suffering, you are suffering. So who is the master? The car is the master.
Okay, I get that part for sure, and I do see that too, and I do I do kind of talk similar to what he's saying about if a word offends you, you become the slave to the word because it affects you, and not the fact that you're above the word. You know, whenever a word can make you angry or sad or whatever, you are a slave to that word. Now, I hope people can. It's really weird to say just get over it, but obviously it's there's a reason why certain words affect people. But I hope people can understand that these are just words and that they should not have any control over you. Otherwise, again, the biggest thing is to point out that you become a slave to that word. And it's kind of like what he's saying about identities of items, or it's really weird to say tourist though, because that's not really like a it's not really saying like I'm a tourist, therefore I'm rich or anything like that. I mean, a tourist is such that you're there visiting, you know. But I get like the rich portion, the a doctor, or you know, I'm I don't know, a millionaire or whatever that is. But I guess my little I don't know. It's all depending on intent. When if you use it to try to I don't know impress people, then yeah, it's definitely ego based. But if you like, if someone says, "Hey, you know, what do you do for a job?" It's like, "Oh, I'm a doctor." You know, that's not me flexing or me trying to show like, yeah, I make lots of money. And but again, I tend to think of the practical. I'm a bit more of a practical person, so I would never ever buy a Rolls Royce. I would never ever buy a very expensive car. I would buy a car that's comfortable for me and that gets great gas mileage or electrical mileage or whatever. Don't get me wrong. I like gadgets and stuff. Or so I do want to. I would love to have an electric car, but you know, with the anyways. But yeah, let's go ahead and continue.
The ego chooses to associate, achieve, obtain, accomplish, thinking that all these associations will give it fulfillment. No, they don't. Freedom comes from dissociation, and dissociation does not mean that you throw your Rolls Royce away. Freedom simply means that internally you are not dependent on the car for your identity. The car is there
To serve a
if
purpose.
it needs to be. I don't think mostly it needs to be there, Rolls Royce kind of thing. But even if it is there, it is at your periphery, mental periphery. It does not become so important to you that you keep it at the center of your life. Similarly, with persons, you start idolizing someone. Huh? You call someone as your role model, and that person becomes so important to you. Or, because I'm talking to young people, you fall in love, and that person becomes your entire universe. If not the entire universe, at least the center of your universe. That's the way of the ego. To depend, to constantly experience a hollow and look towards the world to somehow fill up that hollow. Can this fill up my hollow? I want to attain this. So I'll work very hard to earn money to have this, hoping that this will reduce my feeling of being unfulfilled. Rolls Royce, a higher degree, a better paying job, a bigger house, a new boyfriend, all these are in the same category. The ego is using them to somehow get rid of its state of incompleteness. But these efforts do not succeed. What the ego really wants is freedom, not association. Not make you feel better. Freedom from associations is what makes you come alive. And freedom from associations does not mean being a loner. It simply means not being a slave. Can't you be in a relationship without being a slave? Can't there be a healthy and free relationship? Or do you really have to become somebody's pet dog for the relationship to exist? Right? So that's a choice that you have. Do you want to live in freedom? Or do you want to chase associations, assets, accomplishments all your life? The more you chase, the more you will be disappointed and suffer. Is this making sense? Or is it just too much and too fast? Huh? Not sure. I hope this at least gives you a start. You're young, you have long way to go and you have time.
I'll say this. Mine's a little bit different, a different perspective from his. To me, there's nothing necessarily wrong with chasing status per se. And what I mean by this is that if you chase status to show off, to, well, maybe status is not the right word, but let's say chase achievements and goals. Let me put it that way. Because status is a bit of. If you try to chase goals like, say, a higher paying job, becoming a doctor, whatever it may be, as long as you do not suffer from it, I think you're alright. And what I mean by this is because the reason why he's talking about disassociation is because if you fail at what you're trying to do, or if you're believing that getting this stuff will make you happy, you're wrong. And for me, the way I look at it is by achieving these things is not necessarily to say it makes me happy, but to serve a purpose. So obviously, higher paying job would be great. You're able to afford more things. You're able to perhaps go on vacation or whatever. But to get this high paying job and want your life to be, say, glorious or happy or whatever because of the high paying job, you will be disappointed. You will be sorely disappointed in that. But if you look at it as in the sense of, how do I say, as a way of making your life easier but not suffering from it. It's a little bit hard to put into words. Again, I'm thinking of all this on the spot right now, But yes, so you getting a high paying job should mean that you should be able to afford more things. Your life should become more easier. But don't think that it'll make you happy. Don't think anything that you do in life will make you happy. It can temporarily, but it will be, if you depend on it for the long run, you'll be disappointed. Again, achieving goals should be great, but if you let that if you are trying to achieve that goal makes you suffer, then you're doing it wrong. So again, I guess an example would be, it's like, I'm trying to be the CEO of a company, but I don't get it, and I start crying. I get upset as I tried so hard. I can't believe I got it. Then I'm suffering because of it. If I try to become the CEO and it's like, oh man, I didn't quite get it, that sucks. But that's the way it is, and then I just continue on my life. I didn't suffer from not getting the job, and I didn't suffer from trying to achieve to become a CEO. I think that's the way you should approach things. It's not to. I guess it goes back to get like, goes back to my college where it says give it 110%, but expect nothing from the results. Meaning that if you work your butt off trying to become a CEO, but don't, it's like, well, I tried, but I didn't get it, so let me continue on with my life. Instead of sitting there like, oh my gosh, I spent 2 years of my life training and doing all this to try to achieve this, and I didn't get it. All this work for nothing. You're suffering from it. I hope I'm trying to simplify my wording here, because it is attachment. It is achieving something for the purposes of making you happy. I guess actually to simplify what it says is looking at, which I think he said actually, is looking for external things to make you happy. They will make you happy temporarily, but you should never ever depend on external things to make you happy. And that's essentially, I guess, what he's trying to say. Although I'm trying to find out the robot's ego, though, which I must have missed. Let me know if I missed it. But yes, so don't look for external things to make you happy. There's nothing wrong with achieving stuff, and there's nothing wrong seeking to be good at something. But when you fail at it, if you suffer from it, then you've done it wrong. If you fail at it and you use that as an opportunity, like I've said before, to learn and to better yourself, that is fantastic. Because you're not suffering from it, but you're also improving yourself. So, for example, I don't know, just a sport, I suppose, like boxing, right? You go in boxing, and you lost to your opponent. You're like, oh man, I'm second place now, and but he is a better opponent than I am. I noticed that he did some things differently, and I know I can improve myself. And you think to yourself, well, there'll be next year to do it. I have to work on myself. I have to get better. I have to exercise, punch, and train more. There you go. That's fantastic. And then say, for example, you do that for 10 years and still never hit number one. You're like, well, you know what? I gave it my best shot. I am. There's definitely people out there better than me. The best I could do is second place. It's good enough. That's fantastic. You didn't suffer for trying to achieve your goal. Versus, well, don't worry about the versus part, about you suffering, saying I spent 10 years trying to get number one, and no matter what I do, that I've always failed. You're suffering for your choice there. I hope that makes sense, and I think it's very similar to what it's saying. Is that disassociation, or detaching yourself from the results in a lot of sense. For me, I attach myself to it, but I don't suffer for it. So whenever I achieve my goal, it's great. I'll accept the happiness for achieving my goal. If I fail my goal, I'll go like, I'll accept the loss, and I'll think, what could I have done better? Not that it's like, oh my gosh, I spent all this time and I failed. Oh, being angry and suffering. Anyway, that's my reaction to the robot's ego, which I must have missed. If you like my content, please consider subscribing, thumbs up, thumbs down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next vid.